everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of The New Unfiltered. Before I introduce my guest for today, I just wanted to do a quick mention of Metro Podcast Studio, which is where I'm filming all the episodes this week. Started by my friend, and also really incredible place to film in the city. So head to the show notes if you want to find out more about Metro. Now, those of you who don't know, when I'm not working a lot, I love to work out, and it's really become a form of therapy for me on top of therapy, which I also love. But a few months ago, I was at a Pilates studio in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And quite often when you're at a studio, you find they have clothing or overpriced grip socks when you forget your grip socks. But this particular studio had candles, and I picked up a box and I was like, oh, this is so cute. And I loved it. So I took one home, and there was just something about the vibe of these candles that made me want to look up who started it. And I was thinking, in this day and age, right? I mean, candles, you've got high-end ones, you've got low-end ones, everything in between. I'm just thinking probably the founders, the girl who owns the Pilates studio or whatnot. And I come to find out that it's founded by two very prominent entrepreneurs, Erica Anderson as well as Ingrid Nilsson. For those of you who are potentially a fan of YouTube, Ingrid was one of the first, I think, founding kind of class YouTubers back in 2015. And so in the
2009.
2009. Yeah. In the beauty industry.
Yeah.
And you guys are also ex-girlfriends.
Yeah.
And co-founders.
Yeah, we are, yes.
So Erica, you are also one of the first people at Twitter, the first person at Twitter to do news.
Yeah.
And you worked for Couric. So I just love that you guys co-founded the new Savant, which is what you're currently doing.
Yeah.
But your background in media, I mean, everything you've done, Indiana to New York, I mean, start from the beginning.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah. Well, I love that you found our candles, the new Savant, at Good Time Pilates. So it's so cool to have those IRL experiences. But yeah, so for me, I always thought I was going to be a journalist. I went to J school, Indiana University, and I moved to DC right out of college, chasing those journalism dreams. I got a day job to pay the bills on K Street, actually, at a public affairs firm. But I started moonlighting as a citizen journalist. The year was 2006, and I finally got hired by MTV News to cover the 2008 election as a citizen journalist for Choose or Lose, and that was my entry point into news and into digital and into figuring out storytelling in this new multimedia environment where everything was changing. And most importantly, stories and hooks and community was everything. So I worked for MTV for a year. After that, I was I really want to get inside of a legacy news company. That was a very specific goal, to try and do strategy, because I just love figuring things out. I loved the disruptive nature of what tech was doing to news at the time. And I also just thought it was full of promise and opportunity. I was very optimistic about it. And so I sent a few pitch emails, and one landed in the inbox of an executive at CBS News in New York, and Jim, and he wrote back to me right away, and he said, Katie Couric wants to hire someone just like you.
What?
Yeah. And he's like, can you come in? And so I went in that day. I came up to New York from DC. I went into the office. I met with him. And then the next day I met with Katie and pitched myself to her. And basically what I said was, journalists have to understand these tools. It was 2009. Really, she was on Twitter already, so was Anderson Cooper. But it was just so clear that this is what I said to her, and it wasn't her pitch to her. She totally got it. But journalists need to understand these tools, not just as a way to fact check, but also to connect with people. And so Katie hired me pretty much on the spot, which gave me incredible negotiation, a value or opportunity with the powers that be. And I moved up to New York. I worked for her for a little bit under a year, and then I got recruited by Twitter.
And this was what year?
2009.
A lot of people now, or not back then, but I think now a lot of people are the wave of journalism is dead, or there's, because of social media. What do you have to say to that about journalism?
Well, journalism's certainly not dead. It just is taking new forms. And I think that editing has gone by the wayside. I really miss editors. I think there's a lot of things that need editing. Editors can really take and collaborate with journalists to create incredible content that resonates, and I think that's one of the things that we've lost. Not entirely, though. I mean, there's still lots of great media companies that are, running a business is hard, but there are still a lot that are doing good work. But, I mean, yeah, I still think there's great journalism out there for sure.
Yeah, and I guess I probably should rephrase that. Not journalism, but like I think the forms of journalism, right? Like when you and I were growing up, I mean, there was even these younger teen magazines and Teen Vogue, and now all of that has shifted so much.
It still exists. I mean, I think that there's obviously tectonic shifts happening in the industry. And this is why I was interested in going into tech, because even when I was at CBS News, which was a dream come true, like I got to go work at this incredible, iconic brand. You could kind of feel the Edward Murrow vibes inside. Katie was a really incredible boss and just such an amazing opportunity to work for her. I mean, the way that she carried that job, the way that she carried the pressure, the way that she made decisions on the spot, it's just extraordinary to be at that level and to get to like be right next to her. But when Twitter reached out, they were like, it was a very stealth interview. They didn't really tell me what the job was. They just said it was news related. They had found me because I was doing what I was doing for Katie, we were integrating Twitter into her show, into her daily life, and that was definitely at the time groundbreaking. And I remember like thinking about the pros and cons of leaving CBS to go to Twitter or staying at CBS. And I ultimately wanted to be in an environment where I was going to be learning and building something new. And that's not to say I wouldn't have been learning at CBS, but it just felt like much meatier to be like, oh, this is definitely the future. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like, but it is. And it's scary. Like, I didn't have a software background. I'd never considered working in tech, but I just knew that like it's where the future was. So yeah, I went out there. And when I told Katie, she was like, go out and leave your mark. Like, she was just immediately supportive, which was very cool of her.
Do you remember in that original cold email? Because I talk a lot about cold emailing and like the importance of it, which I love that you said that. So do you remember what it said?
Yeah, I said, well, I think emailing is an art. And I think I have gotten really good at it. I mean, that was my first social network, was Juno, was my email server, like probably like 1995 or 6.
I've never heard of
I loved emailing. Yeah. I would like make friends on spring break and then email. Yeah, I loved emailing. But the email that I sent to CBS, so I had a blog, Erica America, which I created for the MTV job, and definitely is very catchy.
What do you mean you created it? They wanted you to have a blog?
No, I just when I applied for the MTV job, I knew I needed to stand out, and someone had given me the nickname Erica America in DC, and I went home and I got the Twitter account, I got the URL, I don't know what else I got, Facebook maybe, but it just it just was like pithy and a helpful moniker, and branding is everything. Mm-hmm. Branding, obviously. The brand story, right? And it being backed up by values. Yeah. So, but when I sent the note to CBS, I had created a little like landing page, Eric America /CBS News, and basically said to him, hey, like I see from your LinkedIn you do strategy for news. I do too. I would love to like connect with you about how I could help CBS News, think about the future and social specifically. And then I had a link to that. To my website, which included some case studies of like things that I had done. And so then I got like a call back, but I think it was direct to the point. It gave them something to review, and it was actionable, asking if I could come meet.
That's incredible. And I mean, I don't mean to like be staring at you, but I'm like infatuated by that because it's so nice. I always tell someone to have a website or something like that. And these young people who are going out for these jobs, right? And they all think that like, oh, they need millions of social media followers. And I'm like, no, you just need a good pitch. Yeah. And you need something like a website or something like that to like set yourself apart. I
think ultimately I've always approached my jobs as being of service. Like, what is it they need and what is it that I want to offer that would excite me so that it is genuine. But I've always just tried to make myself useful. And that is a very probably Midwest thing that I've taken with me from my youth in Indiana.
So growing up, what was entrepreneurship in your mind? Were you thinking you wanted?
I mean, I always loved making money and doing things. I had a lawn mowing business. My dad used to say I had the largest female-run lawn mowing business in Indiana. I mean, maybe I don't know. I had a lot of lawns. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed that. Yeah, I liked the whole thing about it. I had other just little entrepreneurial startups when I was growing up, just making things or trying to do things for people. And part of it is because it gave me self-esteem. Another part of it is like I enjoyed making my own money so that I could decide how to spend it. I mean, it wasn't big dollars, but I tinted the windows to my car. I mean, it's like embarrassing to admit, but that's definitely just stuff like that I wanted to do. And I was always entrepreneurial. And I come from a family of, my dad was an entrepreneur. He had a small business. And my uncle was an executive at a big corporation. So I kind of growing up, I got to see what it was like to be a CEO of a international company, General Electric. He was the CEO of GE India.
Wow, okay.
And then my dad and my uncle ran a small business in my hometown, which was insurance. And they knew everyone, and it was all about integrity and relationships. And so I was really fascinated with both of them, both of their journeys. And now here I am as the CEO of a fragrance business.
Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah, I'm the middle. I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Are they also entrepreneurs?
No, my sister's a teacher. Okay. She's really great at her job, and my brother is also good at his job. He does sales. And
where you're from in Indiana, is it a small town?
Valparaiso. It's outside of Chicago. Okay. So 40,000 people. But I'm really lucky that I grew up with proximity to Chicago. That really gave me access to the arts, to sports, to more international culture, just more diversity than what I was getting in Indiana. So that really saved me.
But then you leave this small town and you end up in like 2 different big cities, the biggest one. So was there any element along the way where you had like imposter syndrome? Was there a culture shock?
Yeah. I literally would look in the mirror every time before I left my place and just like pump myself up and be like, you got this. Especially when MTV hired me. I came up to New York for the orientation, and I remember being in this hotel room they got me, and I was just like, you can do this, you got this. And really just, in those moments when you're alone, and it's like, I knew that I wanted to take these steps, but I also had never done it, and it was scary, and I was alone. And so really just like digging from that self-confidence that, I can do this, I know I can. And like, why not? Why not me,
Talk to me about like the early days at MTV. So what was your role there initially?
You mean Twitter?
Twitter, not MTV.
Yeah, I was probably at the end of the MTV era, but it was still an amazing experience. But Twitter, so I moved to San Francisco in 2010 to work for Twitter. There was about 300 employees at the time, so it was a really tight-knit group of people. We all, for the most part, kind of know each other still, and we all had Twitter handles. We were all power users of the platform. We would talk to each other by our Twitter monikers. The company was clearly just every day something historic was happening on the platform.
Why?
Whether it was just starting to catch fire. So whether it was like the Dalai Lama posting his first tweet, or a massive celebrity having a breakdown on the platform, which you don't want to remember that, but just there was always something to like an earthquake happening in Japan and it being live tweeted around the world, and that being the way that information was spread. And so there were just historic things happening every moment. And, in those moments of, again, it was all like media-based stuff, the inside of the company, we would be running around, like making sure the Eng team is making sure that databases and servers were still solid. The media team, like me, we were running around making sure that the journalists who were covering this weren't getting, their accounts weren't getting, I don't know, I forget if it was blacklisted or because of the amount that they were tweeting, rate limited. So it was almost like we were a news organization in some way, because breaking news would happen and it would activate us all in different ways to work on it. So it was such an exciting time, and it was such a creative time. When I joined, like, no one was answering emails from news organizations except the developer relations team. So I remember this developer relation colleague, he forwarded me an email from the New York Times, and he was like, do you want to take this? And it was like a social media person at the New York Times trying to figure out why the widget on their website wouldn't work, which is a developer thing. But the developer was like, you go talk to Twitter, So I just started, I was like, oh my God, no one's talking to the Times, BBC, NBC. Literally no one had a point of contact at Twitter. So I just started collecting it and built up, with my media team. So I wasn't the only person on the media team. Chloe Sladden hired me. She was totally the visionary of media at Twitter. She came from television. Robin Sloan, who's now an incredible author, and Adam Sharp, who did government at the time, and then Omida Shatari, who was in LA and did our VIP work. So it was just us. And we basically started figuring out ways to streamline verification. We figured out ways to provide best practices. We figured out ways to advocate for their needs and build products. Like I definitely became more product focused, which was something that really I was most interested in because product is what scales and product is where the influence is. So, you know, I really started to work over that time on building tools for journalists, advocating for their needs in product meetings and that kind of stuff.
I have a photo in my head of like all of you guys at like a small, like Mark Zuckerberg at Harvard, right? Doing Facebook, but you guys, Twitter and like strategy. Where were you all working from?
Yeah, in the office
in
San Francisco. Okay. Yeah, we were in this Folsom Street office and there were 3 floors and then we moved on to Market Street, which was this old iconic Art Deco building that they renovated. And that's when the company got really big pre-IPO and then we IPO'd and it became even bigger.
And you got equity?
I did.
You had equity. Okay, cool.
And this is something I think people should talk about. I did get equity, and I didn't know if it was a lot of equity or if it was a little equity. Like I just knew I was getting a grant, and you know, and then I had to buy my shares, which is what has to happen when you join a company really small. You have to write a check for the strike price. So I bought those shares and then held them for a year and a day, and then I decided to start selling my shares while I was still working there, which maybe it was somewhat controversial. I think not everyone talked about what they were doing with their shares, but for me, it was a big chunk of my wealth. You know, I was pretty young and I didn't have a lot of money, and so I wasn't trying to spend it. I was trying to move it into lower risk financial products, like mutual funds and Vanguard. So that's what I did. I ended up like liquidating my stock from Twitter and pretty much as soon as I could.
I'm so glad you said you think people should talk about it. And I'm intrigued about that because I have a friend of mine working, she was in Austin because I was living there for a while for a big CPG brand.
Yeah.
She's a EA to the young founders and she had no equity. And I was like, from what I know about, you know, tech, you should ask for equity. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And so I think it's super important.
I think it's good to have the conversation. You can always be told no, but you got to ask. And I also learned at Twitter asking, and I learned this on YouTube by watching YouTubers, is like how to ask, figure out if you're being paid the same thing your colleague's getting paid. So I would ask, what's your pay range? Is your pay range this and this? And that's how I started to get more information, where at one point I was able to go to my boss and be like, you know, I figured out there's like seems to be some inequity here in what I'm making, and you know, was able to like get $20K added to my paycheck, you know, like 3 or 4, I think that was like year 4.5 at Twitter. So yeah, just asking questions I think is you know, is what we have to do, and then take that information and figure out what to do with it.
How old were you when you went and asked your boss that?
Probably like 29, 30. I went to Twitter when I was 27, and I left when I was, I think, 31, 32.
How did you have the guts, though, to ask your boss for a raise?
How'd I have the guts to ask? Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. I was always scared. I'm still scared. Like, I'm doing things right now that I've never done. Like, we're out there trying to raise money from angels, and we're trying to figure out what our valuation is as a company, and we're painting a massive picture for what the new Savant can become. And like, I've never done this, and there's still times when I ask myself, like, what business do I have? Like, I was just invited to be on this entrepreneurial committee for the Fragrance Foundation, and which is a big deal, and there's 8 of us, and we represent the interests of brands that do under 10 million in revenue. we haven't hit 1 million yet, but we hope to this year. But it's like, what business do I have to be doing this? And then I'm like, you know, okay, I'm just going to turn that voice off. I obviously have a lot of experience, and but yeah, I think like asking my boss about money. I think I've always just had an interest. I've always wanted to ask questions. I found justice in information, which is why I went into journalism. But I definitely, again, it was a lot of like private moments, like looking at myself in the mirror, being like, you got this, like you can, you will, you got this. And then just like basically saying fuck it and going for it.
And your background at this point, you have so much experience. So, I mean, a lot of people always have imposter syndrome, even if they're at the top, right?
Yeah.
But you're so right with just telling yourself, I mean, you have the experience experience.
Yeah.
And I know now you work for yourself, obviously, but for those people who are still working jobs and want to pursue entrepreneurship, you have to, I mean, fake it till you make it is really where imposter syndrome came from, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think and I think just, again, I think going into anything with the spirit of like openness and asking for more information. I think bosses were always very open to that. You know, it wasn't me going in like dominating or demanding. Like, I just found out like Mike made more than me. I approached it with a sense of curiosity. And that is what opened up the door for, I think, more success.
So you're at Twitter for how long?
5 years. Yeah,
and
5 years.
then what?
I moved back to the East Coast. I honestly didn't know what I was going to do. I followed a girlfriend who got into grad school in Boston, and I got to Boston.
This sign is all Boston too. Yeah,
I was only in Boston for a minute. The relationship didn't work, and it got me back to the East Coast, and I went to New York. I lived out of a suitcase for like 6 months, and I was interviewing. I think after a job like that, I was like, what do I do? And I honestly was very surprised what I did next, which is I got a job offer at Google, and I went to work at Google, and I was at Google for like 3.5 years.
And what was the role there?
Future of News. So I worked on this team called the Google News Lab, and we had this global remit to work with journalists around the world to basically develop projects that could help us build the future of news, which to some extent was really compelling. You know, I got to spend time in Asia working with fact checkers and really entrepreneurial people who are putting their lives on the line to like fact check the internet so that, you know, really detrimental misinformation doesn't hurt people. I think we got to fund some of those. I got to do a lot of funding of organizations. I got to work with product teams to like bring them information. I got to meet with, you know, key influencers and key opinion makers and talk about what Google was doing. And I mean, and obviously working at Google, I say obviously, but like I got to work with incredible people. So that was a great experience in a lot of ways.
And during that period of time at Google, was any part of you like entrepreneurship? I want this, because you're corporate. I mean, it's very corporate, right?
Yeah.
Everything you've been doing.
I think that's what led to this is the more I didn't want to go to Google. After I left Twitter, I was like, I want to be at a small company. And so that's why I say it surprised me that I ended up at Google. But it was an incredible opportunity, and I'm glad I took it. So I think that's just a note on like patience and timing. I've been reading a lot about timing, and timing in a lot of ways is a spiritual practice of like, it wasn't time for me to be at a small company. I got this incredible opportunity. It's very rare. It was great financially for me to like make money and save money. And so I took that opportunity, but I was doing entrepreneurial work inside of Google for them. I really got to make up my job, which was amazing. And I think towards the end when I was there, it began to feel a little bit more like, okay, there's limitations to what I can do, because this is a really established company with a point of view on how they do things already and like reasons why they do things the way they do. And so it became a little less interesting to me, even though it was like really cool and I got to do incredible things.
And it must have, looking back now, right, you had a consistent paycheck.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's what I say to all aspiring founders, you know, keep the day job as long as you can.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah. I mean, I saved my pennies. And in fact, a lot of why I'm able to do this with the new Savant, you know, we are bootstrapping 3 years in. We have had a lot of success. We've had double-digit growth year over year. We're still not able to pay ourselves the salaries we used to make, not even close, to be honest. So I am supplementing my income right now with savings and with some of that Google money, which I'm very grateful for.
Did anyone ever at Google give you bad career advice?
Well, I think people give career advice based on their careers. And so I think I always ask people for career advice because I'm a people person like you. I want to know, like, well, what do they think? Yeah. What's their angle? What's their approach? And yeah, I mean, I remember I helped to place, I got involved at the end of my time at Google with this group of people who were doing internal and external activism to end some of the practices that were supporting, I think, like the sexual harassment continue on at Google. And so there was a big article that came out at the end of my time at Google in the New York Times about the father of Android, this guy who had invented the Android. It kind of came out that he had been a known sexual harasser and had big payouts from Google.
Who the hell invented the Android?
I forget his name, honestly, but isn't that perfect? Yeah. No, I mean, a genius for sure. Someone in the right place, right time came up with that idea, and that was massive. But I got involved with some of these activists who were pushing back and actually trying to, in very meaningful ways, get Google to change practices, and they did, to end forced arbitration, for example, which was really important. But I remember talking to an executive after that, and she, she kind of gave me some career advice that I didn't necessarily take, and I actually don't want to talk about it. I wish I didn't bring it up, but it's like, so anyways, yeah.
How would you advise someone who gets career advice? Maybe like someone who's young and fragile, right? And they get it from a superior or something, and it makes them almost want to detour their career because of someone else's experience.
Yeah. I think one piece of advice I heard at Google that I rolled my eyes at the time, but I actually think it's very true, is like, your career is more like a jungle gym than a ladder. And I was like, they're just saying that because they're not going to promote me this quarter, and that was like my internal voice. But it's actually really true. I think the more I have like loosened my grip on the details of like, am I being promoted on time, quote unquote, is my salary right, quote unquote, like, of course, like we need to, you need to like get what's yours. But I think when I loosened my grip and I was more open to different opportunities, this is where I've really grown. And this is even like with the new Savant, I think ultimately at the end of my time at Google, and I went to Vox Media afterwards for a year to work with Kara Swisher. And that was, honestly, Kara was great. She kind of gave me a place to leave, an opportunity to leave Google. I didn't know what to do, and I EP'd her shows. But I ultimately didn't want to be in media again, and that became really clear to me. But in that like 3 to 4 year period, I just was feeling like intellectually like kind of dry. Like I wanted to be learning new things. And I knew I wasn't going to go back to school because I was like already kind of past that. I feel like my MBA in some ways was Twitter, maybe now the new Savant, but I wanted to be learning new things, and I wanted to have more experience. And so honestly, like I created it with the new Savant.
I want to get into this candle after. So you talk about, so you went to Vox.
Yeah.
And you were there for how long?
Maybe like a year and a half. COVID happened. And then when COVID happened, like probably a lot of people, I just realized, for me, it accelerated the understanding that like, I don't want to be in media. I love media, but I don't want to work on the inside of it. And what do I do? And so I gave them honestly like a 3 or 4 month notice. I kind of offboarded myself slowly. And then I started the new Savant with Ingrid.
What was it about media and the shift in it that was making you not want to participate in that industry anymore?
I think I had always been working on media. I think this was just an identity thing. Like I had always been working on media at Twitter and Google, but I wasn't in media. And so, I was like solving these massive, complex problems. I wasn't producing news stories, which by the way is like a very different skill and one that like I wasn't that passionate about. So when COVID hit, I was overseeing Kara Swisher's podcasts, and I was in the trenches with one of the producers, like editing Pivot with Kara Swisher and Scott Galloway.
Like GarageBand kind of editing? Like
yeah, I wasn't doing the editing. I was on all the interviews. I was helping to write the scripts. I was helping with like high level framing, how to talk about some of these more complex issues that were happening. I was in the news cycle 24/7, and that's not the life I want to live.
Exhausting.
It's not the life I want to live.
Yeah.
So.
And then how did you end up switching out? You gave them 3 months notice?
Pretty much. Yeah, I think I was there. I let them know that I wanted to leave. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And that was the truth. Ingrid and I had started to talk about the new Savant. This is like at the end of 2020, but I didn't know if it was going to be like big enough to support me financially. And I let them know. And again, like I think how you leave a job is more important than how you start a job. Yeah. And so even though I was like, I was leaving, I was ready to be doing something else, but like it really mattered how I showed up. The thank yous, the one-on-ones, like with people, thanking them for the time, wishing them the best. And then I just, then I was out of there.
So at that point though, were you nervous about pivoting again? Because I so appreciate how you talk so authentically about the pivots. I mean, you were at one company and then you left, but it all led to this, right?
Yeah.
But then you're going to leave again, and now pursue something crazy like entrepreneurship. But you met Ingrid not at that point when you were leaving. You had met her prior.
Yeah. I knew Ingrid for 4 years before we started the new Savant. So. And I watched Ingrid, my co-founder, at the end of her chapter of YouTube, where she really was this pioneer on the platform. She developed content formats that are still used to this day. I mean, she would, get ready with me. I don't know if she invented that, but she was definitely in the beginning of it. She invented Vlogmas, which is the thing I didn't know what it was, but it's a big deal. Ingrid literally created that. She just was always creating things. And so in the time that I met her, she was really in this moment of like trying to figure out how to wind down and do something new. She too is an entrepreneur and a creative. So we went out to Indiana at the end of 2020, where I'm from. We were together. We went to Indiana just to get out of New York City because we were there for the pandemic. And she saw a candle. She had retired her YouTube channel. It was the first time she had taken time off in like 10 years. And she saw a candle on my dad's coffee table. And she was like, I wonder how you make that. And that kind of began what now is this, fragrance business that we're building together.
Had you been single for your whole life until you met her?
No. Oh, well, Ingrid and I were a couple when we started the business. We're no longer. We have an amazing relationship. We are great friends and family, really, truthfully. We worked hard on that because we just really, really care about each other. But ultimately, we uncoupled, honestly, almost 2 years ago now, and it was the right decision. And but no, I've had relationships, but
I know you don't like dating apps, and you guys met at a conference, which I also
I've
think
met
is really
all
cute.
of my relationships in person, which is pretty cool. So that tends to be how it happens for me,
especially in this day and age, because people are like, I can't meet anyone, and I'm like, because everyone wants something better, and when I'm just like, go to a bar, like just walk down the street.
Yeah. I met the person I'm dating now through mutual friends after a WNBA basketball game.
Okay.
So yeah,
I feel like you've had more luck. If all of your relationships have been in person up to this point, like you're very lucky, because I think all these young people, it's all like there's no even mindset that you can just walk outside and meet someone. So you guys, you're dating, and then she sees this candle.
Yeah. And
at this point, she had stopped the YouTube.
Yeah.
So you guys went on, I guess it was a vacation then to home.
Yeah.
And then what part of you was like, let me get into business with the person that I'm in a relationship with as well? Because it's so hard.
We were driving back to New York City from Indiana, and we were talking about this idea that she had. And I felt a very strong drive inside of me to ask her if I could be a part of it. And she had been brainstorming other ideas, because she is like the visionary. She comes up with a lot of great ideas, and she was brainstorming other things, but like I didn't have the instinct to be like, let me build that with you. But when she was talking about the new Savant, I was like, can I help you build it? And she said, I'll never forget, we were driving through Pennsylvania, and she was like, I'll think about it. And I was like, cool. Yeah, that's like the right thing to do. We should both think about that, because that's a big deal. And we spent a few weeks. We spent a few weeks, like she was thinking about it, I was thinking about it. And then she was like, okay, I think we should do this together. So we got an attorney, and someone who I knew who works with CPG brands, and she basically did our business formation documents, and we did a questionnaire together as co-founders to like really talk through like how we want to run the business and what would happen if we have an exit or if one of us wants to leave. And so we really kind of had that conversation up front. And then, really, I think the key of this is like we both have a huge amounts of trust in one another. And I think when you're building a business that you're creating something new, and it's high stress and it's also really exciting, like you just have to have trust. And so we had that foundation, which has been like hugely beneficial. And like, I wouldn't want to do this with anyone else.
Do you remember those early on conversations when you were thinking about participating in business together? Were there things that you were like, I'm really scared about this? Not because you were dating, but more so just having a co-founder in general. Because so many co-founder relationships go south.
No, I think I was probably kind of naive, I mean, the co-founder relationships that have gone south, like I've watched movies about them, like The Social Network. And I mean, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, so.
Eric Anderson.
I think like I don't think I thought too much about that because I just had faith, like, I don't know, that no matter what happened, we would be able to like talk about it. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of fear going into it from that perspective.
I talk to a lot of young founders, and I say that sometimes being naive is the best thing.
I think so too.
I think it's so important. And why do you think that it is?
I think like the more success you get, the more you start to overthink things. And, we're bringing a new product to market. And I think we overthought it for a minute. And now we're just like, let's just do it. Like we have an audience that's asking for it. And so, I think once you start to have more success, you start to think more about what the industry is doing rather than like for us, we are creating trends. We are creating scent experiences that haven't existed before in an industry that's largely driven by white, French, cis men, who've told us for a century what smells good. Mm-hmm. And so it's also like an industry. So this is a through line for me of like disrupting, gently disrupting, because I do like the institutions, but this is an opportunity to do something that's like groundbreaking. And so, yeah. So I think like being naive is good. I think as you grow and you start to understand more of what you're doing, what the opportunity is, I think you just have to have more courage and more conviction of like, yeah, like this is what we're doing. It's either going to work or it's not. And no matter what, it's, an incredible journey.
Love that. I talk to a lot of, aspiring founders and kind of help coach them with their startups and whatnot. And I feel like because of social media and the way that you and I grew up, and I started my blog in 2011. And so like, I remember the Twitter days and like totally. I was on blogger.com, the same, like the YouTube days basically, but it was like for blogging, that same timeline. And I think back the way that I talk to people now and they're like, well, but what about this? And I need this kind of following, my TikTok. And I'm like, dude, I just started a fucking blog because like my dad was in jail and I didn't know what to do with my life. You know what I mean? I'm like, how can I get all these young people to just like do it, but not have the expectations? And I think like a lot of it has to do with the pivoting.
I think there's more anxiety than ever before.
Wild, yeah.
I think like I have anxiety, but I think this, the numbers speak for themselves that like this generation coming up based on the integration of cell phones and social networks in their lives creates a new level of anxiety that I think we haven't really contended with before and is going to have consequences. And I know that there are a lot of groups that are popping up like Gen Z that are trying to get each other to take a step back from social media and especially because like that's where that anxiety comes from. I think that like obsession of like, well, what should I need to be doing this, I need to be doing that. The pressure is immense. And I think the best thing we can do and the best thing I do in moments of anxiety is like step away and again, get back to like the root or get grounded, which is like, everything's okay. Like, I'm not superhuman. I can't do 1,000 things. All I can do is like 5 things, like to build my business right now. And so just coming back to that gentleness is really important to me, especially in this environment that we live in. And I hope that like the younger generation realizes that too, because like it's all going to be okay.
It's funny now because on Twitter and when Elon took it over,
I
mean, I view Twitter now so differently.
Yeah.
And I would love to know like your thoughts now on Twitter as well as Reddit, which you mentioned has been kind of good for the brand.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Twitter and the state of it now? Because it's so different. And I ask you that because I see so many people tweet and it's always like, these workaholics and it's the way that the algorithm now is set up. And so I replied to somebody's tweet the other day that was like, everyone should be working all the time and that's how you build a brand. And I was like, I actually feel the best when I just stop. And when I'm anxious or depressed, it's the only way I can exist is just to stop.
Totally. Yeah, I don't spend any time on Twitter anymore. I honestly stopped using it 2 or 3 years ago and it has improved the quality of my life. So I'm not really, I don't think about it at all, other than to know at a high level, like what he has done, his first few moves to like reduce the trust and safety team, to change content moderation guidelines, like all those things are like the beginning of the undoing of what makes Twitter really great. Because what makes Twitter really great are like rules that made it so the best content could bubble up, and that it's not just hateful rhetoric, which we saw in the early days, and it was really dangerous in so many ways. And so I don't have a lot of I don't give it a lot of headspace.
Interesting. Okay, so you guys self-funded this, and now you said you're bootstrap whatnot, and now you're thinking about I guess raising a full round.
I mean, we're thinking about it. So the new Savant, the new Savant, the name means the self-made path in life. So it's this idea that you don't have to have a traditional path to be successful, that, unique individuality and personality is something to be celebrated. So that's what the new Savant means. And And when we launched the new Savant, we currently make premium scented candles, and we're working on other products in the fragrance space as well. But when Ingrid and I launched it in December of 2020 with 500 candles that she made, they sold out in 7 minutes. And then
Where was the shop? Like on?
It was all online, thenewsavant.com. And we have been growing ever since. And we put $30,000 collectively of our own money into the business to get it off the ground. Yeah. I mean, no, Ingrid put a little bit more in.
Why?
She has more money. I mean, anyway, she just has more money. Okay. Yeah. She did very well. And and Ingrid's just, I don't know. That's a good question, actually.
You guys are 50-50.
Ingrid's a little bit more.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah. Ingrid, definitely. Ingrid's idea. She's the boss. I'm the CEO, but she's the boss. Like it's her creative vision. She has the instincts, and also like. So what we're doing that's different is Ingrid's designing all of the scents from scratch based on her life experiences or scent notes that she always wanted but could never find. And then we work with master perfumers at Givaudan, which is one of the largest fragrance houses in the world. And so with Ingrid and either Linda Song or Dana Schmidt, who are the noses, they're creating something together. And then we get that oil once it's finalized to our Brooklyn studio, and we make all the candles ourselves. We have a team of 2 who make all the candles. And so that's really what we're trying to do. That's like different and original. And then the packaging, which drew you in too, it's like, we don't think we're making a higher end candle, but we don't think it needs to be stuffy. Like I think like it's not fun to take yourself too seriously. And I'm kind of like over the branding that's like very serious. So for us with our packaging, it's very playful. It brings the scent ingredients forward. So I'm looking at Sapphics in the City, which comes back for Pride. It drops May 15th, and it has notes of peony petals, muddled raspberries, Thai rose apple, spicy chili pepper. And it has, all of those ingredients on the front. Yeah, it's very.
Maybe I want to drink it.
It's very food. Yeah, there's a lot of food inspiration in our scents as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so it sold out then, that original launch.
Yeah.
And then what was the next step? Did you have enough product to fulfill all those orders?
No. Well, yeah, we only sold what we had, and then we had to like figure out how to fulfill it. I mean, that was like so much work. We had never done that before. We had like, packing slips printed out all over the floor, and talk about just going for it, and then we were like taking the packages ourselves down to the post office to get it out. We were kind of hiding from her co-op. Like we didn't want them to know, we were having boxes of wax and materials shipped to her apartment, and I'm like carrying it up. And we just realized, I think one of the first risks that we took that felt like a risk for me, because I tend to have more fear around financial risks, which is something that like, I was taught growing up, which is for better or worse. But the first financial risk we took was to rent a space. But we needed it. So in the early part of 2021, we looked around Brooklyn and we found an old textile factory that has, cut up their space into like dozens of spaces for makers, and we rented one. And so we then moved over there and started making candles. And for the first, honestly, year, maybe 2 years, we really couldn't keep up with demand. We would do a drop and we wouldn't have enough made, and we would be making more, but we didn't have enough. And so it's been cool in the sense that there's not a lot of waste. I mean, there's always going to be waste when you're in a consumer packaging goods industry, like whether that's the boxes coming to you, that the wax is in, there's always waste. But because we are so intentional about making things for the people who want it, not just trying to like make 10,000 of these because we think it's going to be a hit, but like making a few thousand because we know people are going to buy it, and then making more if the demand is there. That's been a really, I think our customers really appreciate that. And then it's also just a nice way to test out new scents in the market.
Do you love entrepreneurship since having years of corporate and now being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's, we always used to say at Twitter, like we were building the plane as we were flying it. But I think, and that was true as to what was happening in the early days of Twitter, but I do feel that way here. I mean, I'm putting the scaffolding up, I'm building the foundation of the business, whether that's, from payroll and HR to accounting to the brand, and like what we're doing in, taking risks with brands and with conversations we're having around fragrance. Like we're just figuring it out. And it's honestly the best job I've ever had.
Oh, that makes me so happy
Yeah.
because it's a hard job, right? And it's so different. Like your family now, what do they think about it?
I don't think they really get it, to be honest. I have a lot of people who support me, but I definitely think that my dad comes from a generation that, like the corporate job was the ideal. But honestly, like this is totally who I am. Like, and to be honest, like I would always regret it if I wasn't taking this risk to build something from scratch, and like what a gift it is to do that. So, yeah.
You mentioned Reddit before we were filming, and I'm curious because I tell a lot of people, and my actually now ex-boyfriend is who got me into Reddit. And I realize how much Reddit is incredible, but I find for entrepreneurs and like brands and scale. So tell me about that, because I've realized that.
I use Reddit for everything. I use it to discover new music. I use it to learn about e-commerce software that I'm thinking about integrating. And then I also use it because we were getting a lot of traffic from Reddit, like probably like 2 years ago. And I was like, what is all this traffic from Reddit? And
How did you know it was trappic? Like it was linking back
on
to
Shopify.
The
I could see the referral
Okay.
traffic coming from Reddit. And so I looked it up and I found this review from a user called Surly Skinned Hag. And she wrote this review and we printed it and put it on the walls of the studio. We don't know who she is. We love you.
She knows you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll read you a little bit. Though I normally rant about perfume here, I thought it was high time to talk about other good-smelling things, in this case, candles. A dear friend gave me a gift card to the new Savant for my birthday, which was very fun as I had never heard of the company before, and their candles would usually be out of my price point. I picked Androgyne because I felt like it wasn't a scent profile I saw in candles very often. I expected a nice smell and appreciated a new candle, and that was about it. And then it arrived. Not to be dramatic, but I think it's the best candle I've ever had, in all italics. Let's start with the packaging and branding. Those things aren't 100% necessary for me to fall in love, though they are appreciated. I normally go for a weirder, darker vibe, but this is clean and sleek and I love it. The scent is exactly the notes listed, but I spent less time trying to pick individual things out and more time repeating, holy fuck, this smells so good, over and over. It's Paris. It's chic without being stuffy. It's dewy skin. It's silk bed sheets. It's the beautiful person across the bar. It goes on and on and on.
And just to confirm, this is not you writing this.
No,
Ingrid.
This is like a random, amazing customer. Yeah, and then like the throw is solid without being overpowering. I mean, this is when we knew. We're like, oh yeah, like we love our candles because we are obsessive and like we only want to put things into people's homes that we would burn and that we feel like is a good product. But like to see this review come through, we were like, oh, okay, people are finding it. There's like there's some organic lift that's happening that's really big.
Do you remember how many sales that generated?
I don't think I could track it directly, but it was definitely noticeable.
Yeah, that's what I believe about Reddit, and I think there are people who write that. I haven't written maybe like reviews like that.
Yeah, no, Reddit is. I think Reddit is like a diamond in the rough. I think it's great. It's really informative. It's kind of that like message board / blogs, people with expertise, and not everyone like you can sift through it, but it's been a great resource for me on a professional and personal level.
And there's some good subreddits as well, and you don't have to write about yourself like whatnot, but I've also found that there's people who have multiple Reddit accounts and will perhaps, I mean, I've done this, I won't lie, like have a podcast, right? And I'll make, messages on podcast subreddits, like, oh, great, people want a business podcast, but there's a lot of rules, you guys, so anyone listening, like, don't go just being like, I'm the best podcast, listen to my podcast.
Yeah, no.
You really have to do it in a very authentic, chill way. Never just mention yourself. You always want to mention like multiple. So it's
I've never used it to promote, but that's good to know.
It is. It's quite cool. So what's the end goal? Like you were in media for so long. Now you're an entrepreneur. These candles are obviously very successful.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I love running a business. I want to continue to build this business and to give back to our customers and to bring, like, I think in this moment of like digital, just the obsessive amount of digital like lives that we lead. I think it's really nice to have analog products that can center you and bring you into whatever your version of wellness is, but just calm. And so I want to keep building the new Savant to really help it to be like this next generation fragrance wellness experience, and I think we can do it, and I think just bring people a lot of like joy and delight. And so I want to keep doing that, and get it to a place where we can like support staff and more staff and do good in the world.
If there's an aspiring entrepreneur listening to this who likes a space that's like candles or CPG, even though it's very saturated markets, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think like for me, like have an original idea or have an original point of view. I think in being in CPG, I've now learned that there are just a lot of people that do drop shipping where like they're not even making their own product. Their game is just selling. And I actually think that's fine. It's a totally different game but what we're doing and what some of the most inspiring founders are doing for me is like creating original products where there's a need. And so I don't know. I think also like you're going to spend so much time on this. So like you might as well be really excited about it and feel uniquely passionate about it, that it like is something that resonates with you. So, and I think like don't force it, like don't force it. It's either it's time, I would just say don't force it.
How long did it take to actually come up with this design? I mean, there's different designs for the boxes, but how much has this evolved since day one?
Not much. Like boxes were new. Like we sent these out with just the labels, and the labels tell a story all the way around, which is really intentional. We want things to look good, not just from like the Instagram angle, but with you when you live with it. So we came out with the boxes. That took some time, but we have an amazing designer. We've never met her in person. She's based in North Carolina.
Where'd you find her?
The internet. Ingrid knew her, like from the internet. And Ingrid gives her direction. This is all Ingrid's creative vision, and she's really talented. And so, yeah.
And then the scents, you come up with them with her too.
Ingrid comes up with the scents and works with perfumers to bring them to life.
Then what about some more of the partnerships? I mean, you guys have one with the WNBA. How have those come to light? And what's kind of the goal behind those? I
mean, the WNBA, the partnership we did last year with the New York Liberty, the WNBA team, came about organically. Ingrid and I are season ticket holders, so we love women's sports. And they found out about us, and we made like 250 candles for them, and they sold out in like 2 games. And so this year we're coming back with a new candle that launches in June for the New York Liberty and the WNBA. And it's just like a cool way to like, I think, give them a different product in their merch store, and for us just to like get exposed to more people that we think will like our candles. But we've got some like cool ideas for collabs coming up, and that's going to be something fun. But yeah, I mean, women's sports is such a thing we're both passionate about, so it's fun to do that.
I've never even thought about that kind of a collab, so that's pretty cool. But I think
so too, because retail is really hard. Like we're 84% e-commerce right now, which is great, and like envy it. Like I know a lot of other founders who are retail first, like envy that. But you also like to build a brand. You want to be in retail spaces. Retail spaces are incredibly competitive. Like we are in a lot of indie retail stores, which is amazing, and that's the best because like they're small business owners too, and so it's really nice to work with them. But to get shelf space at bigger places is really hard. So what I'm proud about with this Fanatics partnership we did, Fanatics is the company that runs the merch stores at all of the arenas, so sports arenas. Yeah. So we're working directly with them to do this candle, which is just like a really cool prototype and test for us of like finding our products in new spaces.
So the Pilates studio that I found these at, how did you get in there?
Ingrid does Pilates there.
Oh, she does do Pilates. Okay, so what is
she brought her candles there, and they love them. And that's the thing is like, I mean, you see it like they sell. So then people, and that's the whole thing you got to prove is like, does your product sell? And does the product sell when you're not there pitching it?
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So the fact that we have these customers that are coming back to us who are like, it's selling, it stands alone, and people buy it, it's a huge deal. So
I was going to ask, how much of the success to date do you think has been attributed to the fact that she's a founder who came from this very large platform?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm so proud of our repeat customer purchase rate, because a lot of people have come to us because they know of Ingrid and they respect and adore Ingrid, and that's definitely something she earned over time through a lot of hard work. And I'm grateful for that, but it's really the repeat purchases that are really high for us that is what is a testament to the product, and that's what really matters. But yeah, it doesn't, obviously it's a great asset to us that Ingrid she's very beloved, and I mean, I've been with her and she's been stopped on the street like hundreds of times since I've known her. And it is always the most endearing, genuine comment from someone who says, I grew up with you, or you taught me how to put on my makeup, or most of the time, like I came out because of you.
Yeah.
And she really changed a lot of lives with her coming out videos. So anyways, Ingrid's amazing. And I love getting to build this with her.
Oh, it's so cute. It's so nice too. I mean, those early days of the internet, and you saw. I mean, you weren't in the influencer space, but you saw being at those media companies. And I think a lot of those OG people who started, there's a different like passion and authenticity in comparison to what we see nowadays.
She'll say this, like, she didn't get into the industry to be famous, and she didn't get into it to make it a job. So I think that's a different motivation. And that's not to say that people who do it today because they want it to be a job, there's nothing wrong with that. But for the first class of creators, from what Ingrid's told me, they were wacky and creative and a little weird, and in their bedrooms doing stuff like, you know, for each other, like ideas and skits and music and beauty. And it was just a different era. And so it was really special. And I think those things are still happening on the internet. You just have to look harder, you know, because it's the next thing. So when the next thing happens, there aren't all eyes on it right away.
I feel like I'm dating myself because I remember being that 12-year-old sitting in my room blogging, and there was this community of us.
Really, it's so
like,
cool.
The style rookie, like Tavi Jevinson, and all these girls that really made, and it was just, it was cute and it was iconic. So how do you define being fearless, Erica?
Oh, how do I define being fearless? I define being fearless as like walking through that door no matter what. It means for me, like showing up and believing in myself, even if other people don't, and just saying, fuck it.
Yeah.
What's the worst that could happen? And that's like just knowing like this doesn't really matter that much. Like, yes, I wanted all of those cool jobs I had, but I guess just knowing that like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Mm-hmm. And so for me, being fearless is showing up no matter what. And it's believing in yourself, and it's knowing that if it doesn't work out, that's okay. It's the next thing.
That's a kick-ass answer off the fly, because people will always stop like, wait, I have a better one. Yeah. It was amazing. Where can everyone find out more about the brand? Follow you guys on social. Thank you.
Yeah, please check out our candles, thenewsavant.com. You can get all of them there. And then we are in CO Bigelow if you're in New York City, Ryder, and we have a whole list of stockists if you want to smell them IRL. But honestly, you can get our discovery set on our website if you're curious, you want to test them all, or you can just go for the 7-ounce candle, which burns for up to 50 hours. It's $39, and it's just really amazing. So
affordable in comparison to like Diptyque and some of these other ridiculous.
Totally. I was just doing a price analysis yesterday. I know all about that. Yeah, we are pretty. Yeah. We're right between the
But this is so much more fun, and like I said, like engaging and nice, you know, all those I like to break away from the mold. So this is nice.
Thank you so much.
So thank you.
Thank you for having me on. It's really meaningful, Alexa. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much to everyone who watches and listens to the New Unfiltered. Head to the show notes if you want the direct link to buy the new Savant and have these in your home, or give them as a gift, as our Reddit friend did, or God given. And follow the New Unfiltered on social media, which is at the New Unfiltered, as well as at Alexa_Curtis. And I'll see you guys next week for a new episode of the show.